Proudly broadcasting from the Richard Philip Cavallaro studio.
WRHU.
Hempstead.
You've discovered
A cornerstone of the Lawrence Herbert School of Communication.
WRHU.
Now, Long Island's largest radio news team brings you the Associated Press award-winning program, Newsline.
Coming up on Newsline, Monday, October 28th, 2024.
Virginia files an emergency petition to purge voters from their rolls.
The candidates are still on the campaign trail with only one more full week to go until the election.
Voters are worried about the potential for post-election challenges and violence.
Ballot boxes in Washington and Oregon are set on fire in an attempt to stop early voting.
In tech news, this fitness app gave away world leaders' locations. Biden speaks out after a report says Musk worked illegally in the U.S., and CrowdStrike is suing Delta. I'm Alexa D'Amato, and I'll have all that and more later in the broadcast.
In entertainment tonight, Timothy Chalamet, Bob's Burgers, and We Remember Matthew Perry 1 year later. I'm Ricky Huber, and I'll have all that and more for you later in the broadcast.
The Islanders take on the Anaheim Ducks, women's soccer starts the CAA tournament, and the Yankees are back in the Bronx. I'm Julian Amonte, and I'll have all that and more coming up.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Cameron Bowden.
And I'm Chris Casella. We begin tonight's broadcast in Virginia. The Republican Party in Virginia has filed an immediate request for the U.S. Supreme Court to weigh in on a state policy that would purge the names of 1,500 people who identified as non-citizens. Virginian Attorney General Jason Miyares filed an emergency appeal following a decision from a lower court that would stop the purge of these voters. U.S. District Judge Patricia Giles blocked the state program because federal law prohibits purges less than 90 days to an election. Following the decision on Friday, Governor Glenn Youngkin went on Fox News and said the following.
I've got to say that again because it is almost astonishing for me to even say it. A federal judge just ordered the Commonwealth of Virginia to reinstate over 1,500 people who had self-identified as non-citizens back on the voter rolls.
Attorney General Miyares said that the decision will confuse voters, put a serious strain on the election machinery, and potentially lead to non-citizens voting, thinking that they are allowed to.
The presidential candidates are hot on the campaign trail, and with only 1 week left before the election, the candidates are looking to get their final interactions with voters in those key swing states. Vice President and Democratic presidential nominee Kamala Harris is in Philadelphia today, alongside former President Barack Obama and Pennsylvania native Bruce Springsteen. Former President and Republican presidential nominee Donald Trump is in Georgia today, first attending a National Faith Summit and then heading to Georgia Tech. Both vice presidential nominees, Governor Tim Walz and Senator J.D. Vance, are in Wisconsin, making some vital appearances. Polls between Harris and Trump are razor thin, with national polls from the New York Times highlighting only a 1% difference between the candidates.
A new poll says that Americans feel uneasy about the aftermath of the upcoming election. The poll, conducted by the Associated Press, states that 4 in 10 registered voters are either extremely or very concerned that a violent attempt to overturn the election results will take place. 9 out of 10 voters believe that the loser of the election is obligated to concede to the winner, and only 1 in 3 voters believe Trump will do so if he loses. The poll also showed divisions among party lines, as over 3/4 of Democrat voters said Kamala Harris would strengthen democracy if she is elected, and about the same amount of Republicans said the same about Trump. This poll comes as Donald Trump continues to repeat false claims of election fraud, claims which led a crowd of his supporters to attack the Capitol on January 6th of 2021.
The FBI and local authorities in Portland, Oregon, and Vancouver, Washington are investigating fires that occurred in ballot boxes this morning. Firefighters and Portland officers responded to a fire in one ballot drop box at around 3:30 this morning and determined the cause to be an incendiary device placed inside. A fire suppressant within the Portland box prevented the flames from causing severe damage, with only 3 ballots being somewhat burned. Another fire was spotted in the nearby town of Vancouver, Washington, shortly after the Portland fire. The fire suppression system in the Vancouver box failed to activate properly, and hundreds of ballots were destroyed. Representative Mark Gulenskap Perez has requested an overnight law enforcement presence at every ballot box until Election Day in order to prevent any further attempts at arson.
The Israeli military stepped up attacks in southern Lebanon and northern Gaza over the weekend. In northern Gaza, Israeli tanks blockaded a refugee camp consisting of over 100,000 people. Israeli forces also launched a raid into Kamal Adwan Hospital and captured 100 people it claimed were Hamas militants. Both Hamas and hospital staff denied any Hamas presence at the hospital. Back in Lebanon, over a dozen villages on the Israeli border have been subjected to widespread destruction from Israeli attacks. A report from Reuters compares satellite photos from these border towns in October of last year to photos taken this year, which show many structures have been turned into craters. While these towns have been evacuated, many former residents fear that they will have nothing to return home to. The Israeli military claims the militant group Hezbollah operates frequently in civilian areas, justifying their destruction. Hezbollah and civilians say that is not the case.
More news coming out of the Middle East. Over the weekend, Israel initiated a retaliatory attack against Iran for airstrikes earlier this month. Satellite images from the Israeli response showed damaged facilities at military bases in Iran, which some experts say are linked to Iran's ballistic missile program. According to Daniel Hagari, spokesperson for the Israeli Defense Force, he explained the attacks and offered some vital warnings.
We have concluded the Israeli response to Iran's attack against Israel. We conducted targeted and precise strikes on military targets in Iran, thwarting immediate threats to the state of Israel. If the regime in Iran were to make the mistake of beginning a new round of escalation, we will be obligated to respond. Our message is clear. All those who threaten the state of Israel and seek to drag the region into wider escalation will pay a heavy price.
Iranian Foreign Ministry spokesman Esmail Bagay just today said that the government would use all available tools to respond to the weekend attacks.
To discuss the ongoing and ever-expanding war in the Middle East, we go to a conversation that WRHU's Cameron Bowden had with Professor of Political Science Stephanie Nanes.
So the ever-broadening conflict in the Middle East has roped in a number of different actors across the region, ranging from Hezbollah in Lebanon to Syria to the Houthis in Yemen and most recently Iran. Could you detail why you think so many nations have really become involved in this conflict?
I mean, the conflict really started between Hamas and Israel, but it was when Hezbollah started bombing Israel October 8th. And that's actually, in my view, all the other parties became party to this. I mean, because Hezbollah is backed by Iran, Hezbollah offered support to Hamas. We can understand why Hezbollah did that, but if they didn't, then Hezbollah and Iran would actually not be part of this. Israel would not have extended the war to Hezbollah in going after Hamas. But indeed, with Hezbollah, again, as a sign of solidarity, right, with the Palestinians, Hezbollah is backed by Iran. The bombing of Syria is also connected. The Houthis, again, is a little more, also, again, it's part of Iran, supporting its allies in the region, projecting its influence in the region. This is not to say that the Houthis, or particularly Hezbollah or Hamas, kind of always do the bidding of Iran, right? That's simplistic and problematic.
Recently, we're going to now focus on Iran and Israel. Israel made a retaliatory attack on Iran for airstrikes that the government had sent earlier this month. Could you describe where we are with this aspect of the conflict and what we might see from Israel and Iran going forward?
Right. I mean, where we are, a number of things I think are notable about the Israeli attacks. One is that there was, in fact, not coordination, but that Israel actually came to the U.S. and there have been a number of actions that Israel has taken that have basically taken the U.S. by surprise. We're their primary ally, center of arms. So the fact that it appears Israel was somehow constrained, in what the U.S. wanted, I think is interesting, because there have been a number of sort of counts in which the U.S. has sent very clear signals, like red lines, that Israel has just crossed. So here there was some coordination, not coordination, but that Israel listened to what the U.S. was saying. These attacks were on military facilities, and it was very pointed that it was not on nuclear facilities. And this was very purposeful to allow Israel to make a response, but not to provoke Iran too much. So it's kind of this balance. It has brought out what has been a covert war for decades, like quite some time, decades, right? So it has brought it out into the open. Everything I've read or can tell is that the limited nature of the Israeli attacks, like relatively limited. I mean, they blew up a bunch of military installations. maybe one or two Iranian soldiers were killed. So there was sort of very minimal, I mean, like no damage to civilians, but sort of, it's sort of minimal enough that it actually allows Iran an off-ramp, or both of them kind of like, okay, Israel responded to the attacks. We can both, it allows kind of a possibility to ratchet things down. Everything I've read, people seem to be saying that so far the language coming out of Iran does not indicate, is not beating the drum, is indicating either that things might be calming down, but a line has been crossed. But in bringing this out into the open, that I think this is the first Israeli, open military attack on Iranian territory.
If a full-blown war between Israel and Iran does happen, what are the both regional but worldwide implications?
I mean, bad, like all very, like, I mean, I think they're all very bad. Most of the other the players outside of the region, and I think that includes Russia, includes China and the US, everyone kind of like wants their friend to get a chance to get a punch in, but all of those larger players, right, global powers, none of them want to have a full-out war. Like, I think that they all kind of, because they all recognize that they could get sucked in various ways. So if things, yeah, but again, I mean, wars have a way of having their own momentum, and they, might no longer be in the control of the US or Russia or China or any of these other factors. I mean, I honestly, it's unprecedented. Once a war starts, you can't really control it.
Thank you again to Professor Stephanie Nanes and Cameron Bowden for that interview.
The Pentagon confirms that 10,000 North Korean soldiers are being trained in Russia to fight against Ukraine. NATO intelligence suggests that some of these troops have already been deployed to the Kursk region, a front that Russia has been struggling against for some months now. NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte called the deployment, quote, a significant escalation, and Pentagon officials say that North Korean troops will be considered legitimate targets if they enter combat zones. Many believe that these additional troops will exacerbate the already strained Ukrainian troops and also heat up tensions in East Asia.
After the weekend snap elections in Japan, the results of the voting have not left any one party with a clear lead over the others. The election has left the future of the country's government in flux as voters punished the scandal-tainted coalition of Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba, leaving the country's yen at a 3-month low. During a news conference, Ishiba stated that, quote, we cannot allow even a moment of stagnation as we face very difficult situations both in our security and economic environments. The Liberal Democratic Party, which Ishiba is a member of, lost seats in the lower house of parliament, moving from 279 to 215. This is in contrast with the main party opposition, the Constitutional Democratic Party of Japan, which gained seats, moving from 98 to 148, but still not in the majority of the 233 seats needed.
Earlier today, thousands of people gathered outside of the country of Georgia's parliament after a governing party won an election despite reports of voting irregularities. Western nations have said that these reports must be investigated, and some of those that were gathered outside of the parliament held anti-Russian banners, as the party that won with 54% of the vote was the Georgian Dream Party, which has ties with Russia. 4 other parties in opposition of the Georgian Dream have stated that they do not recognize the results and that a boycott would happen in the chamber. Georgia President Salo Zurabishvili had encouraged people to go to the streets and stated that, quote, you did not lose the elections, your vote was stolen, and they tried to steal your future as well. Together, peacefully, as we are today, we will defend what is ours, your constitutional right to have your vote respected.
Coming up after your Newsline specialty report with Alexa D'Amato, former President Trump visited Madison Square Garden last night. History is made with over 250,000 early ballots cast in the NYC, and an interagency operation starts within the New York prison that houses Diddy. But first, your Newsline traffic and weather update with Jackson Warren. WRHU News Time is 5:44.
Newsline. Up to the minute local traffic.
On this fine Monday afternoon, the weather outside is mostly sunny, maintaining a chilly 61 degrees with a wind gust of 15 miles per hour. Later on tonight, it's going to be partly cloudy where the temperatures will drop to a low of 49 degrees with a 21% chance of rain mixed in with a wind gust of 24 miles per hour. So bundle up heavy for tonight. For tomorrow morning, the weather will be a mixture of clouds and sunshine while maintaining a high of 66 degrees with a wind gust of 24 miles per hour. So make sure to pack a jacket or extra hoodie to stay warm. For the rest of the week, it's going to be slightly warm with a nice October breeze with highs that can reach up to 72 degrees and lows that drop down to 44. But if I was you, I would double check with your weather app or local news for updates. If you're on the road today, make sure to look out for these delays. On I-278 westbound, there's a crash that is blocking the middle lane of I-278 Brooklyn-Queens Expressway before exit 34. Expect a 20-minute delay. On New York 440 northbound, there's a blockage on exit 8 due to a fire department activity. Expect a 30-minute delay. I'm Jackson Warren, and stay tuned for my second traffic update later on this broadcast.
Newsline Technology.
An investigation by a French newspaper discovered that the fitness app Strava is used by several world leaders and their bodyguards. The newspaper found that they could track the bodyguards and those they're protecting. Several U.S. Secret Service agents use the app, including those who work closely with Republican presidential nominee Donald Trump. The location services on the app also showed a private trip French President Emmanuel Macron took, which was not listed on the presidential agenda. First Ladies Melania Trump and Jill Biden could also be tracked through their bodyguards. 26 U.S. Secret Service agents in charge of presidential security were identified through Strava. Moving to news about Elon Musk, a published report says that the Tesla CEO worked illegally in the U.S. for a period of time. However, Musk denies this. According to the Washington Post, Musk worked while on a student visa, but was not enrolled in any courses when working. At a Pittsburgh campaign event with union workers, here's what President Joe Biden said.
His new the wealthiest man in the world is now his ally, right? Well, that wealthiest man in the world turned out to be a legal worker here when he was here. Oh, I'm serious. He was supposed to be in school when he came on a student visa. He wasn't in school. He was violating the law. He's talking about all these illegals coming our way.
Investors in Musk's company were concerned about Musk being deported and gave him a deadline to get a work visa. This comes as Musk, originally from South Africa, has been campaigning for Republican nominee Donald Trump and sharing his stance on immigration. Moving to cybersecurity firm CrowdStrike, the company sued Delta after a software update started a global outage in July. The outage led to international flight cancellations and affected banks, healthcare, and hotels. CrowdStrike said that it did not cause the damage that Delta is saying and that the airline refused assistance from CrowdStrike and Microsoft. The cybersecurity company is looking for a declaratory judgment in addition to legal fees. With your technology report, I'm Alexa D'Amato.
WRHU News Time is 5:47. Thank you, Jackson Warren and Alexa D'Amato, for those reports. While former President Donald Trump held his rally inside Madison Square Garden yesterday, crowds of people, both in support and protest for the Republican nominee, gathered outside of the venue. Some supporters of Trump, such as Long Islander George Schmidt, stated that they felt as though, quote, the economy is in trouble, and cited Trump's policies regarding illegal citizens, foreign policies, and the conflicts in Israel as reasons to support the former president, while some in protest of Trump cited his legal battles as concerns and worries amongst Harris supporters. The air was palpable with excitement within the center as attendees listened to speech after speech from famous Trump supporters. Hulk Hogan was one of the speakers for Trump and shared all that he saw before him in MSG.
You know something, Trump maniacs? I don't see no stinking Nazis in here. I don't see no stinking domestic terrorists in here. The only thing I see in here are a bunch of hard-working men and women that are real Americans, brother.
Trump spoke about a lot of different issues, ranging from immigration to what he calls revitalizing the American vision.
We're bringing back the American dream, and we're going to bring it back at the highest level that you've ever seen. But for that to happen, we must defeat Kamala Harris and stop her radical left agenda with a landslide that is too big to rig. So you need to get out and vote.
One of the most controversial comments of the night came from comedian Tony Hinchcliffe, who had some choice words about Puerto Rico.
There's literally a floating island of garbage in the middle of the ocean right now. Yeah, I think it's called Puerto Rico.
Dean Mario Murillo from the Lawrence Herbert School of Communications, who is of Puerto Rican descent, shared his thoughts on this comment.
It's generated by hate, it's generated by ignorance, and unfortunately, even though the Trump campaign immediately distanced itself from the speaker, they clearly invited him to speak, and they kind of knew what he was and should have expected what kind of stuff that he threw out. So it wasn't endorsed by Trump, but it was clearly part of Trump's message. And it's just an example of Trump's ongoing disdain for Puerto Rico.
In response, Puerto Rican artist Benito Antonio Martinez Ocasio, popularly known as Bad Bunny, showed his support for Vice President Harris's campaign and shared videos of Harris to his 45 million-plus followers on social media.
Early voting is underway here in New York State, with the first 2 days this weekend drawing in record numbers of people. 140,000 voted early across the state, and in Brooklyn and Manhattan alone, 70,000 people casted their ballots at early voting locations. In only 2 days, over 257,000 ballots were cast, the highest turnout in the state's history. Here in Long Island, lines throughout the day were common, some saying they had to wait over an hour to vote. Nassau Democratic Elections Commissioner James Schuerman said that voters definitely came out in droves and turnout met expectations. Hofstra University is just one of those early voting sites, and WRHU's Dorcas Umaro spent time talking to some voters who had and hadn't casted their ballots. Richard Ford, a local resident in Rockville Center, explained how convenient it was for him to come and vote.
Honestly, I came here, because I just finished walking. I said, there's a track over there, was it Mitchell Field? So I said, come up here and just vote and get it out the way.
Sophomore neuroscience major at Hofstra University, Rezwana Ahmed, said that she wasn't expecting to vote today, but she decided to anyways.
Well, this is very exciting because it's my first time voting. I was so excited for it, and everyone in my family is very serious about voting, and they think you should fight for your rights, so that's what I'm doing. I came into Hofstra today not expecting anything, but I saw there was a chance to vote early, so I was like, why not do it?
Fine arts major at the Pratt Institute, Renee Oriana, shared that early voting had a lot of positive impacts for voters.
Everybody were to wait until November 5th. There would be a lot of chaos, and it can be potentially dangerous for a lot of people, especially marginalized communities. So I feel like early voting opens up a space where people can safely vote.
Natalia Oriana, a student at the New York Institute of Technology, shared that her first time voting was tinged with the understanding of this election's impacts.
I guess it's knowing what the stake of the country is at, and knowing who is gonna not only represent us but care for us, because sometimes people don't really know the impact that our representatives have.
Early voting is open for the rest of the week here in New York State, and no matter your assigned polling location, you're able to go to any polling spot to cast your ballot.
Investigators from federal agencies have launched a, quote, interagency operation at the Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn, the same jail where Sean Diddy Combs is being held. The prisoners have complained about poor conditions. At the same time, they say they've been subjected to frequent lockdowns and have been barred from leaving their cells for visits, calls, showers, or exercise. The Justice Department and Bureau of Prisons are pushing to fix problems and hold perpetrators accountable. In a statement on Monday, the Bureau of Prisons said its operation in Brooklyn had been planned in advance and there was, quote, no active threat.
The outcome of next week's election in 7 New York congressional districts could determine which political party controls the U.S. House for the next 2 years. In the House of Representatives, Republicans currently hold 220 seats and Democrats 212 seats, with 3 vacancies, meaning that if all Democrats vote no, Republicans could lose only 3 of their members' votes if they want to pass a bill. How New Yorkers vote in the 7 districts, 3 on Long Island, 2 in the Hudson Valley, and 2 upstate, will be key to whether Democratic Representative Hakeem Jeffries becomes House Speaker or remains the minority leader.
It's been 8 years since a class action lawsuit was filed against the NYPD, claiming federal disability law was violated, and deadlines to fix the situation have been pushed back. Last month, a 62-year-old woman who walks with a cane couldn't get up the stairs of the 68th precinct and had to yell for a police officer to escort her up. In the department's 2024 to 2028 Accessible NYPD plan, updated earlier this year, the police department had planned to make public areas in 16 station houses fully accessible by the end of 2021. The judge presiding over the case ruled that in February 2020, NYPD had discriminated against people with mobility disabilities. These plans have been pushed back by the pandemic to the end of 2027.
Coming up, your Newsline Entertainment Report with Ricky Hubert and your Newsline Sports Break with Juliana Monti. But first, your Newsline Traffic Update with Jackson Warren. WRHU News Time is 5:54.
Newsline. Up to the minute local traffic.
If you're traveling towards JFK or LaGuardia today, look out for these delays. As of now, there's no destination delay for JFK or LaGuardia. For departure and arrival delay, both airports are expecting a delay of 15 minutes or less. If you're heading towards the LIRR today, there is one delay. As of today through November 1st, there will be no westbound service at Forest Hill and Kew Gardens due to maintenance on the tracks. The maintenance starts at 10 a.m. till 3 p.m. For the rest of the trains, they're going to be on time, so don't be late. For the traffic, there is a right lane block due to a stole vehicle going westbound on the Lincoln Toll. Expect a 20-minute delay. That is all the traffic and weather update for now. I'm Jackson Warren.
Newsline. Entertainment.
The family of the late Friends actor Matthew Perry have a sense of optimism as a year after the actor's tragic passing has led to 5 people charged in connection to his drug overdose being indicted. Perry's stepfather, Dateline host Keith Morrison, said in response to the indictment, quote, "What I'm hoping is that people who have put themselves in the business of supplying people with drugs that kill them are now on notice." Later adding, quote, "You're going down, baby." Some of the people charged include 2 of Perry's doctors, his assistant, and an alleged San Fernando drug dealer. U.S. Attorney Martin Estrada noted that, quote, "These people cared more about profiting off of Mr. Perry than they did for his well-being. This case, along with our many other prosecutions of drug dealers who caused death, send a clear message that we will hold drug dealers accountable for the deaths they cause." Jay Johnson, a television actor known for his roles in Bob's Burgers and Arrested Development, was sentenced to 1 year in prison for his role in the January 6th Capitol riot. Prosecutors said that Johnson, along with other rioters, chanted, quote, "Heave ho," as they pushed against police officers guarding a tunnel entrance to the Capitol during the riot. Johnson also recorded the violence on his phone as he cracked jokes with fellow rioters. Johnson expressed regret in what he did that day, saying that he made it harder for police to do their job. Additionally, he noted that he never thought a riot would break out that day, stating, quote, "That was because of my own ignorance, I believe. If I'd been more political, I could have seen that coming, perhaps." Lastly, in Washington Square Park yesterday, a Timothée Chalamet lookalike contest was held. The unofficial competition took place at 1 p.m. with hundreds dressed up as Chalamet's various characters. But the real dead ringer for the 28-year-old actor appeared when Chalamet himself showed up. New York police officers arrived quickly on the scene to break up the crowd having gathered without a permit and are rumored to have arrested the event organizer. Despite this, organizers and guests tried to continue the event and eventually crowned a winner dressed as Willy Wonka. However, it is unknown if the winner was able to receive the $50 grand prize. With your Newsline Entertainment Report, I'm Ricky Hubert, WRHU.
From the Philip Cavallero Sports Desk, this is your Newsline Sports Update.
With your Newsline update, I'm Juliana Monti. Tomorrow, the Islanders host the Anaheim Ducks. New York sits at 500 with a 3-3-2 record after losing their last contest. The Isles won both games against the Ducks last season, leading 10-4 with goals. The Ducks will attempt to snap their 4-game road losing streak, half of those coming in the tri-state area. Former Duck Kyle Palmieri leads the Islanders with 7 points for 4 goals and 3 assists. With regular season soccer over, Hofstra women's soccer will have their goal at their 9th CAA championship during playoffs. The Pride contests the Delaware Blue Hands Thursday at 4 p.m. at Monmouth, who won the regular season title. Hofstra fell to Delaware earlier this season 2-1, but the last time these two teams contested in the CAA playoffs, the Pride went on to defeat Delaware and capture the 2018 CAA title. The LA Dodgers have taken a commanding 2-0 lead in the World Series. Now in the Bronx, the Yankees look to get back in the win column. Freddie Freeman has been LA's leading man, hitting a walk-off grand slam and in game with a single home run. With your Newsline update, I'm Juliana Monti.
That will do it for tonight's edition of Newsline. Many thanks to the entire WRHU news team. Engineering our show this evening is the paranormal Parker Driscoll and the autumnal Alondra Nolasco Rojas.
Thank you for tuning in to Newsline, only here on your 4-time Marconi Award-winning radio station, 88.7 FM Radio Hofstra University.
Access real-time local Long Island, New York, and global news, along with content from WRHU Talent Monday through Thursday, 5:30 to 6 p.m.
And tune back in from 7 to 9 a.m. Monday through Friday for our talk show, where we discuss Long Island life, national news, and international issues from the minds and mouths of Hofstra students on the morning wake-up call.
Lastly, check us out on social media at WRHU News for behind-the-scenes content.
For Newsline, I'm Chris Casella.
And I'm Cameron Bowden.
Thank you for listening.
And have a spooky night, Long Island.